This is the cockpit of a Boeing 747 set up for very long transoceanic flights. Of all of its hundreds of systems, life support, guidance, electrical, and hydraulic are the most important. Now, the guidance navigation system is a high-tech marvel using a large number of repetitive systems to avoid virtually any chance of failure.
This is Gianna Parker at the San Mateo Times. We're wondering if we can talk to the congressman this morning about this KAL jet. You can't. Where is he? Where is he? Do you know? Are you expecting you might be able to get a hold of him later this morning?
The night before, I'd heard a quick broadcast on the radio that a 747 was missing, and 747s just aren't missing, so I knew we had something cooking that morning.
This is the Schultz. That's what Schultz is saying.
Now is this the latest one that they said they were going to send? This is the right one?
Yes.
We consider ourselves the local paper for the peninsula, for San Mateo County. So even though it was a world story, it's our responsibility to tell the world story in our paper as best we can. Well, why don't we go with Xiao then, see if we can find it.
Xiao's in Central America.
Let's give it some thought.
Let's come up with another angle.
The best we could do would be to call our local officials who are supposed to know these things, such as Congressman Lantos or Congressman Xiao, and say, hey, what's up? This is an international situation. And Schultz is supposedly going to have a press conference. He's going to tell everything he knows. So we're going to have a long story, and we've got some good art.
How do they know it was shot down?
Well, Japan is saying so. They said it dropped off the screen, and apparently they were reading these other jets.
And then Horgan just told me about the Sully being identified as in the barrel murders in San Francisco.
I don't know if he's charged with it yet, but that would be a top story on its own any other day.
Good morning from KCBS News Radio 74, your news station and the choice of news professionals. I'm Al Hart.
And I'm Chris Brecher.
And here are the headline stories.
The U.S. wants an explanation from the Soviet Union for the shooting down of a South Korean airliner over the North Pacific.
And in a minute, we'll be talking to an expert on Soviet affairs from Stanford.
San Francisco police say they'd like to talk with a former Millbrae policeman about the murders of 3 people whose bodies were found in barrels in Golden Gate Park earlier this year.
Also coming up in the next half hour, we'll be talking with Dr. Lonnie Carton from the Learning Center, the Critics' Choice with Steve Baffrey. There will be business news with Don Wiegand from the Pacific Stock Exchange, plus Stardate and more weather from Bob Holman. Here's Chris Brecher.
The United States is demanding that the Soviet Union explain why it shot down a Korean Airlines plane that had strayed into Soviet airspace. At a news conference,
I would say that in the tradition of Walter Cronkite, we try to tell it like it is. That means telling the news as it happens, not doing a lot of stories that really aren't important to people, but to try to give a good picture of what's happening locally and around the world. We also have bureaus all around the Bay, and we're very interested in local news, primarily because we think the people are.
At a news conference this morning, Schultz said the United States reacts with revulsion to what he called an appalling act. He said there is no excuse for shooting down an unarmed civilian aircraft, regardless of where it was.
Korean Airlines Flight 7 left New York City Tuesday night with 269 people aboard, including Congressman Larry McDonald, a conservative Democrat from Georgia.
August tends to be a very slow month, and that was the first day of September, so we'd come off a month of fairly quiet news days in which there was not a lot going on. But I would say it was fairly typical in this newsroom when there's a big story. It reminded me of the day the Coalinga earthquake. It was the same kind of feeling of momentum and adrenaline flowing.
Once again, 269 people aboard that Korean Airlines Flight 7 out of New York City Tuesday night, now confirmed to have been shot down by a Soviet jet fighter interceptor.
We're going to do the military. He's going to do how the American military responds, how the Russian military responds, thanks to the control from the ground. They don't do this on their own. He's got more information than ABC correspondents had an hour ago on television. So he's going to do the military.
The issues that we were talking about.
If I've made a decision, it turns out to be wrong later in the day, I say, whoops, that was wrong. We better change it now before it gets too late, and not get wrapped up in trying to defend something that turns out not to be right. You're making so many decisions in that job. They can't all be right immediately, and what you've got to do is be rational and mature enough to say, wait a minute, that's got to get changed. We've got to change it now rather than wait for 3 hours. Or wait a minute, we forgot something. Somebody else may have beaten us on this, or somebody else has uncovered something, but we've got to go do it now because it's important and our audience needs to know. That's the ultimate concern to me, is that we get the best and most accurate information out to the viewers.
Besides Korea and Ireland, how many people are flying that route? Is Pan Am flying that route?
I don't know. That's sort of the polar route from Alaska. It's presumed a lot of them. That's one of the things Louis is working on today.
893, Gary Repstock. 1401. Yeah, Gary, I think you should, from there you should go to the Reds consulate. There's fairly a lot of activity there already.
We'll air the story. We'll have the latest on the story, but I want that Oak story. I want that racial story. I want the Golden Gate Bridge story. What are we doing about the Golden Gate Bridge strike? You know, I don't know. Does anybody know? That's what our audience has to know tonight. It's more important to them than what happens over there. Local news. That's what this is all about.
I don't want all our eggs in one basket.
Imagine my surprise.
Gee, just like Dewey wins.
And the Santa Rosa, I want that Santa Rosa family.
What's the Santa Rosa?
There were 2 people from Santa Rosa who apparently were aboard that plane.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Okay, let's go through this stuff. As I see it now, we've got at least 4 reporters who will be able to do pieces and another reporter who may be able to do one. Every news department is operated differently. Ours is sort of a headless committee. Where everybody has their say. That obviously, eventually the buck stops somewhere. In terms of assigning stories, I guess the buck stops with me. But on a given day, if a particular person has expertise in a particular story, the rest of us will listen to that person. These morning meetings are a good place to sort of get a yeasty conversation going, where you get some ideas that wouldn't come out of just one person sitting in office trying to figure out what to do. Finley is doing the military aspects of the thing. He's going to talk about what American rules are about foreign airplanes in American airspace.
And what the hell is he using for visuals?
I don't know what the hell he's using for visuals. He's got miles and miles of stuff, including all sorts of U.S. Air Force video in his military correspondent bureau chief files. You're going to have to repeat some visuals. I think this is big enough. Let's go on. You can worry about that later. Right now, we just want to make sure that the stuff that we got to do is getting done.
The other plea I got to make, though, is that because the visuals are limited on this story, there's going to be one hell of a load on the art department, on computer graphics and all that stuff. It's all got to go through Karen Young, and it's all got to get coordinated early, or it's going to be a madhouse.
For this appalling act. And with the Space Shuttle Challenger continuing its history-making.
Well, it did. No,
I think we need to build a time chronology. What time did the Soviets monitor them? At what times did the Soviets shoot them down? At what time did the Soviets send their first reconnaissance jet?
Right.
The Schultz sound bites.
Right.
Schultz illustrates it point by point by point.
Now, where are we on the Russians?
Okay. Well, why don't you start with Kevin?
I don't believe that most people get their information from the radio or from television. They know that an airliner was shot down, but they don't know who did it or why it was done or why the airliner was where the airliner was. And I think people continue to look to the print medium for that kind of information, and will continue to do so.
We're starting with Bill Frisbee, who's the chief pilot of Pan Am, and he'll give her a rundown on how they plot the courses and how they use the Jepson maps to avoid straying into Soviet airspace, which is all automatic. You know before you leave an airport where you're going to go. And each of these course changes as you go across the globe are punched into a computer, so theoretically there's no danger.
So you shouldn't be able to go off route?
No.
Was he here? Is he somewhere we can photograph him and his charts?
Yeah, they're all down at SFO.
Yeah, we ought to send the camera down there. Okay, and apart from the Russians, what do we got?
We have barrel murder.
Well, how seriously do they take that? They're just going to talk to him about it?
They do. No, they believe it.
They think it? They think so now?
It's real now.
Oh, good. All right. We've ever had his picture?
Yeah. I remember when he was nice looking guy.
Yeah, right.
I need someone to help me with this episode of the plane being shot down by the Soviets, and I thought this was Mr. Foley's office.
So that's an issue.
Would he be the best one to help me on the subject, do you think?
Deadline's a Friday.
He's not available, and somebody really recommended you. Could you possibly help me? And I don't need to quote you by name or anything, but I certainly need some help in understanding how much you guys fly this route and whether in the past Soviet airspace has been considered especially dangerous and so forth. Could you help me with that? On the understanding, I don't need to quote you by name, I just need help.
Hey, Marshal, is Sacramento doing anything on Duke Majan's not being able to find a house?
You're talking about He's saying that he suddenly has not found?
Well, Balzar has a piece here in the Times.
There's been a string of wire stories about that for the past 3 weeks. Until he really comes out and does something, I thought I'd wait.
All right, but they're keeping an eye on it?
Yeah.
Good. And is Liebert planning to do anything today on that political party that's going nowhere?
That party apparently split in two.
Oh.
Jesse, which is...
Gee, they never told us.
They weren't, I know, they didn't warn us in advance. Jesse Jackson is apparently going to get commoners' backing, and I've been talking to other members of the party who are furious and say that, they're turning against Commoner and he's a traitor and all that. Since he's not here yet, I thought, well, when we get him in town tomorrow, we'll do one good piece on it.
So we'll just wait till tomorrow. You're not planning anything today, then?
No, I think it's best to do it when they get here and then the opening of the convention.
Okay. That Korean flight started in New York. And that's why they stopped for fuel in Anchorage.
Yeah, there's a couple of wire stories in there about that.
They don't have a passenger list yet, though?
I just looked.
Hey, kid, did we talk once about a story on this bakery that bakes on Wednesday while everybody else is observing the union?
Yeah, a long time ago.
We never wrote it, though.
No.
I still think it's interesting that somebody bakes on Wednesdays when us bread freaks have had to go with day-old bread traditionally here. And it says in there, I don't know if it's with their lead time, if it's still true, that they're still battling with the unions about it.
Okay.
Okay, why don't you have a read and let me know what you think.
The first question is, do you have any information on the South Korean commercial jet?
Quite a bit. Yeah, Schultz said that it definitely was a Russian missile fired by a jet, a Russian MiG, yeah.
Any reason?
Yeah.
They tracked it for 3.5 hours, and just a few minutes ago, Korea announced that the thing was on track, on course.
Was there an intrusion on Russian territory?
That's the suspicion.
But Schultz was asked at his press conference this morning whether there was something sensitive at Sakhalin that they were supposed to ignore. Schultz said no.
Yeah.
But nobody knows. There was one congressman involved.
Head of the John Birch.
Yeah, right.
Hi, this is Jana Parker at the San Mateo Times again. I'm calling back to see if there's any statement yet from the senator. Yeah, I'm running into a deadline. I've only got about 20 more minutes. Do you have any idea when he'll be calling?
Barry? Hello. Goodbye.
Terry?
Yeah.
All right, hold on a second. Yeah, it just came up.
Well, I've got the inspectors linked them, but I don't see anything here about formal charges.
Okay, this is fine. That's great. We'll get it right out. Thank you. Great.
Tom, I got this guy from the Hoover Institute who's an expert on Soviet airspace. Do you want me to just add it to that, or do you want
Let's do it for the 2-star. Just take your time on it now.
Just do a separate thing?
No, what we'll do is we'll call back the one that you did for the 1-star, and we'll make it better and so forth after we get past it. Okay, so just take your time and we'll get
I don't think I'll have any trouble with the app. I'm not going to change it.
Basically, we're a local paper. Our strength is in the local news. When a story of this magnitude breaks, the local aspect of our paper is overridden by the public interest in the story. This was such a big story that it overshadowed, for all intents and purposes, any local story that we had going, and we had one or two very good local stories happening at the same time. We had a story on a man who's accused of several murders, a former policeman, Jack Sully. And on any other news day, that would have been the top story. Well, what we did was to make it our number 2 story, and it was the only other story above the fold in that day's page 1.
San Francisco homicide inspectors have linked former Millbrae police officer Anthony John Jack Sully to the deaths of 3 people whose bodies were found earlier this year stuffed in 2 barrels in Golden Gate Park, according to an informed source close to the case. The homicide inspectors notified various Peninsula police agencies Wednesday that Sully had been made by fingerprints on 2 barrel murders located in Golden Gate Park.
All right, Joe, it's up to you.
That was probably the most news-worthy day, the most interesting day we've had in years. We feel the same kind of emotional shock at a horror like this as everyone else does. But we have a job to do, and we just sort of put up the defenses and go about doing our work. No matter how the news breaks, we're prepared. We have enough people to handle it on deadline.
The Soviet attack on a South Korean airliner was criticized in the harshest terms possible by representatives in the nation's capital this morning. I am deeply shocked by the inexplicable and barbaric act of the Soviet Union in shooting down without provocation an unarmed commercial jet airliner, Representative Tom Lantos, Democrat San Mateo, said through his spokesman, Art Brodsky. Lantos is in Hungary, his native country, but was in contact with his office this morning after learning that the jumbo jet with 269 passengers had been shot down. The tragic loss of life is totally and completely without justification, Lantos said.
We pressed the button before. There's no answer, and these people are pretty tight-lipped when it comes to any of this sort of thing. We don't expect really much here.
You always hang around the Russian embassy?
I only hang around the action. I'm called the Eggman. They know me throughout the valley. I sold eggs until I sold too many big ones at a low price, and they threw me out of town. I ran for the vice presidency in 1980.
Yes, this is Sergeant Reed from the police department. I would like to speak with you for a moment. Excuse me, I was not able to understand your last message.
I like to demonstrate here, and I have some broadcasters that demonstrate and study already, so I just rushed down here for join them.
What's your name?
My name is Peter Kim.
Spell it, please.
Peter Kim.
Peter Kim?
Yes.
How old are you, Mr. Kim?
I'm 30. Next month I'll be 33. I remember the past couple of years ago, they shot a Korean airline and they killed 2 people. And this time I really very shocked, and some of the broadcasters said they have some demonstration already started on. That's why I came rush to come over here. You know, cannot just sit on my chair. I have to do something because they're so upset about it. So I just rushed to here. So
you didn't know anybody on the plane?
No, it's not relative, nothing, because most of Korean they flights on they departure in New York, so probably a lot of people that live in New York, probably they are more shocked than I do.
Hi, you come here to demonstrate?
Yes, right, but in the news broadcast they said the demonstration already started, so I hear, but nobody is here.
No, there's a lot of news persons here.
I see, yeah, but I better go, yeah.
No, you don't have to go. What I'm trying to tell you is that you must demonstrate across the street from
I see. Well, I better go, because anyways, tomorrow...
If you wish to demonstrate, you may demonstrate across the street.
I see, I'll do. Okay, thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Sergeant, now maybe I can... Sergeant, tell me what happened when you went inside.
Well, I was greeted by Consul Orloff, and I informed him that we'd received a phone call threat of a bomb being placed in this building. At this point, he said that he had had several calls also, that he was aware of the threat, and that they had in fact searched their premises and were confident that it was secure.
Is that sufficient for you?
Yes, it is.
So you'll now leave?
We will now leave the interior of the premises. We'll stay outside.
Sergeant, when he says that he's received several phone calls, at least several threats or just information that...
I understood it to be threats. That was my interpretation.
You're probably right.
I have a press release of the Soviet consulate with the official test report on this incident with the planes.
Can you tell us, and can you read from that for us, for those of us that need the benefit of sound?
No, sir, that's all I can say at this moment. And
it didn't say that anybody shot anything down here.
Well, that's all I have, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I didn't get one.
I don't know.
Sure. Can you say it? Can you say
Why they just shoot the passenger aircraft and they can see it if they don't answer it?
Have you talked with people from your embassy?
No, I haven't talked to them. Yeah, I just called them and find out what they're gonna do. And I believe the major demonstration goes on tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock right here.
2-1 mark. Officials at the Soviet consulate say no comment to questions about the downed Korean airliner. This is Jerry Wilcox at the consulate on Green Street. Police have been here all morning to guard against trouble. There have been some scattered incidents of people yelling obscenities in the direction of the consulate.
And another man in an expensive Cadillac protesting outside the Soviet embassy. That's a different segment of society. Those are the people who elected Ronald Reagan president.
I would hope that our reporters are sophisticated enough to say, if they go to a demonstration, there are 18 camera crews and 5 demonstrators, to say, we were here today and so were all the other reporters, and there were more of us than there were of them. That should be a part of the story.
Now, a short time ago, a Korean American named Peter Kim arrived outside the consulate. He said he was so upset that he felt he just had to do something, so he came here.
Yeah, I go back in the fight against them. Yeah, sure. It is murder. It is murder. That's why I come here for.
There have been a few scattered incidents here today of people shouting obscenities at the building, but nothing serious, and police do remain on the scene. This is Jerry Wilcox at the Soviet consulate on Green Street.
I called everybody I could to find out what was going on. And I couldn't believe that my father was there on that plane.
I want all of it.
And then that roughly 9 o'clock this morning, my father's wife called me from Philadelphia and said the State Department called her and told her that yes, it did happen.
Back up.
And no one knows.
Where she says at roughly 9 o'clock.
Okay, we'll probably take a couple of major cities here as reference. Tokyo, obviously.
Put that on here.
No, because they're going to say that...
We're just going to label this as scheduled flight path.
Right.
Okay.
Cynthia, you're going to call Minetta at 45? I will. Minetta confirmed, 45. I'm going to call Minetta now. All right, you call Minetta.
Doesn't give the link when there's Skype.
No, it is 15 minutes. It'll go to 45. At least I hope so. So we'll call Minetta now, just in case. All right, if he gets the call through, I'll get someone to tape it and we'll evaluate. Okay, it's unlikely we'll get it through. Just in general.
Yeah, calling in general, yeah. There is no cancellation of flights.
Yeah, right, okay.
Yeah, what? What? Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. You know, the only ones in the world tonight who are disagreeing with what Schultz says are the Soviet.
Because I want people to understand that, you know, I mean, that's a big airplane.
Yeah.
There's plenty of stuff.
Instruments, huh?
Oh yeah, he shot it. It's all in there. That wouldn't be a bad shot to use.
This is the cockpit of a Boeing 747 set up for very long transoceanic flights. Of all of its hundreds of systems, life support, guidance, electrical, and hydraulic.
And we'll check our live camera outside the Soviet consulate. The full story at 5 and 6 right here on Channel 7 News. Well, a one-story news day.
Robin Young. Because I got received this.
For your information, Bill Clinton in good shape.
I'll take it. Okay, we got a bunch of here's A2 number 1 and 2. Don't be nervous. Mike, do you want A2 number 1 and 2? Candy, don't go up yet. Take these. Well, see, and Fitz also has a good story on that Millbrae cop, so he could go on further on beach check. Newsroom. Can't get through. Newsroom. We're having a problem. I've got 2 cows waiting for me to find out if Fitz is going to file. Is it still busy? All right, well, let's leave it. All right, you throw to Fitzmaurice, and Diane, you throw to Karen Stanley. All right, you guys ready? All right, hang on. You've got Taylor B-check on 7-5, Callis on 7-6.
Coming up on the 5 o'clock hour at KCBS San Francisco, for Mike Pulsifer, I'm Stan Bunger.
With Don Mosley.
And in the next half hour, these are our headline stories.
The Korean consul in San Francisco says the Russian attack was barbaric.
There are angry demonstrations outside the Soviet consulate.
The legislative pay raise bill gets through the state senate.
Also coming up in the next 30 minutes, Don Klein with sports. Bob Hallman checks the weather. It's nice. Don Wiegand with the business news. George with traffic. And our beat check reporters check in from around the bay.
Fascinating guests with lots to share. Using information first and fair. Doing everything to keep you aware. KCBS San Francisco.
CBS News Time, 5 o'clock.
CBS News, I'm Stephanie Shelton. There's been little doubt all day, but there's no doubt now. The State Department says there were no survivors. All the 269 people on board Korean Airlines Flight 007 are dead.
The United States reacts with revulsion to this attack. Loss of life appears to be heavy. We can see no excuse whatsoever for this appalling act.
Good evening. The only country in the world disagreeing with Secretary of State Shultz tonight is the Soviet Union, the object of his verbal attack today because of their military attack yesterday on a defenseless commercial jetliner. Korean Airlines Flight 007 was on its way to Seoul by way of New York and Anchorage, Alaska, when somehow it strayed into Soviet airspace. After monitoring it for several hours, a Soviet MiG fighter shot it down. 269 people on board, including at least 15 Americans, one of them a congressman, are feared and presumed dead tonight. That is the situation as the free world knows it. The Soviet people are being told something quite different.
We have a voiceover, number 5 from Terry, about that.
Also on the flight was a doctor from New Jersey, his wife and daughter. There is much more to this story that's dominating our news today.
I think we're behind here. We need a new Arvin 54.
Arvin 52.
Oh, Terry, you're a tragedy of any kind.
Not Arvin, I need a 53 now.
That's happening. They're probably turning the other cheek and say, well, okay,
really, Matt, take that.
Russia, you've done.
Good afternoon, 5:06 at KCBS San Francisco. Stan Bunger here for Mike Pulsifer, Don Mosley along with me this afternoon, and it's time for the Afternoon Beat Check, sponsored by Home Savings of America.
San Francisco police are maintaining a vigil outside the Soviet consulate here in San Francisco as reaction continues to pour in on the downing of the Korean plane. I'm Diane Callis. Police say there has been no trouble there this afternoon. Karen Stanley has more on Beat Check now from Sacramento.
A huge pay raise bill for the governor, other constitutional office holders, and lawmakers was rammed through the state Senate today in almost record-setting time, and now goes to the governor's desk for his signature. And Barbara Taylor has San Francisco news.
Mayor Feinstein has discarded the idea of saving Candlestick Park and is now saying that she wants a new stadium built. Mayor Feinstein hopes to break the logjam in the hotel union negotiations by sitting down with hotel management tomorrow afternoon, just a few hours before the workers are scheduled to go on strike.
This is the cockpit of a Boeing 747 set up for very long transoceanic flights. Of all of its hundreds of systems, life support, guidance, electrical, and hydraulic are the most important. Now, the guidance navigation system is a high-tech marvel using a large number of repetitive systems to avoid virtually any chance of failure.
It's 5:15 and good afternoon from KCBS San Francisco, where an award-winning news team keeps you up to date around the clock. Ruth Wurzberger and Cynthia Louie handling the editorial chores this afternoon. Jim Lauder is at the controls. And for Mike Pulsifer, I'm Stan Bunger. And Don Mosley, it's been one angry comment after another here in San Francisco today.
Yes, and in a blistering comment this afternoon, the Korean consulate in San Francisco has condemned the Soviet Union for shooting down the Korean Airlines jumbo jet. Consul Tae-hee Park called it a barbaric act.
The shooting down incident of the Korean airline is a grave violation of international law.
Outside the consulate building, there were shouts of outrage, as we hear now on the scene from KCBS newsman Jerry Wilcox.
One angry man shouting, "We've got to stop these murderers," yanked open the steel front gate at the consulate. The gate was supposedly locked. Several hours later, a young consular employee emerged and handed out typewritten copies of the TASS news agency report, which said the Soviet MiG fighters had tried to give the plane assistance, but that it did not react.
No, sir. That's all I can say at this moment. And it didn't say that anybody shot anything down here. Well, that's all I have, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
The curious and the angry and reporters and a few policemen kept vigil outside amidst frequent speculation that eavesdropping devices inside the consulate were picking up every word spoken out in the street. Jerry Wilcox, KCBS News, San Francisco.
At the Soviet consulate, there was no reaction for most of the day, but there had been hecklers and protesters from the moment the news was released. San Francisco police were called in, as usual, to keep the peace.
We had one incident where a man parked the car, walked up, shook the gate. The gate came open, he screamed obscenities and hollered murderer, and we escorted him away. That's been it. There's been no violence or anything.
And later, while we were waiting in vain for an official comment from the Consul General, another protester, out of the same mold as the man in the Mercedes, drove by.
Asshole!
Demonstrations in front of the Soviet consulate are certainly nothing unusual, but as one San Francisco policeman assigned to this beat told me today, this is the first time they've had a man in a business suit driving a Mercedes and another man in an expensive Cadillac protesting outside the Soviet embassy. That's a different segment of society. Those are the people who elected Ronald Reagan president. And also a South Korean demanding of his country and this one that Russia not go unpunished.
That's all you gotta do.
At the Soviet consulate in San Francisco for Cover Story, Gary Rebstock, Channel 7 News.
2 members of the space shuttle crew are lifting weights in space. Astronauts Richard Truly and Dale Gardner used the shuttle's 50-foot mechanical arm to raise a space dumbbell the size of a truck.
Okay.
Thank you, Larry. Here are some of the super big dollar winners of the 5. Nice to meet you. We raised our eyebrows over the title controversy, and we swiftly plunked down over $60 million in receipts.
One story a day. Will we nuke them? More reaction, more information coming in on that. Jerry Jensen and Pete Wilson are next with the latest on Channel 7 News at 6.
The Soviet Union owes an explanation to the world about how and why this tragedy has occurred.
The eyes of the world are focused this evening on a tiny sliver of ocean between Japan and the Soviet Union. That is where Korea Airline Flight 7, a 747 jet, disappeared while on what was supposed to be a routine flight between New York and Seoul, South Korea. Flight 7, with more than 260 people aboard, apparently was shot out of the sky by a Russian missile when it strayed outside authorized airspace. The best information we have this evening is that Russian pilots blasted that airliner out of the sky, killing all of the passengers, including several Americans.
Commercial airline pilots who fly the route used by the Korean jet shot down over the Soviet Union consider it one of the most navigationally sensitive in the world. Some pilots and spokesmen for American carriers said they could not understand how the plane could have drifted into Soviet airspace. The sophistication of the inertial navigation system and the cross-checking of information by the pilot and co-pilot, and the fact that there are 3 of those systems, assure adherence to the selected track.
Yeah, correct. So, but do you think the way this reads now, it's confusing the cross-checking? It's not just the fact that there are 3 systems, it's the fact that...
And the cross-checking
The fact that there are 3 of those systems assure adherence to the selected track, said Terry Hickman, a Pan American World Airways pilot who has flown the route since 1968 and who is vice chairman of all Pan Am pilots belonging to the Airline Pilots Association.
Leaders of the Bay Area Korean American community brought their anger and condemnation over the downing of the Korean civilian jetliner to the Soviet consulate in San Francisco. 24 reporters and photographers staked out the building all day, but the only official response from the consul was a task dispatch. One of the handful of angry protesters who appeared at the consulate during the day was Peter Kim, 32, a Korean-born businessman who has lived here since 1973. "I'm very upset about what the Soviets did," he said. "I just had to come here to show what my people feel about this. I'm so upset. I can do nothing, but I just can't sit at work, so I came here."
The news of the downed jumbo jet hits very hard here in the Bay Area this evening. Channel 7's Ron Tank has been with the family in Petaluma.
Roughly 9 o'clock this morning, my father's wife called me from Philadelphia and said the State Department had called her and told her that yes, it did happen, and my dad was here. My dad was on that plane.
Brother, this is outrageous. I wonder what the rest of the world is thinking about all this.
What do you think?
Oh, I'm mad. Very mad.
I think anybody who was affected by this incident is very, very angry.
In Petaluma, Ron Tank, Channel 7 News.
We want to continue our coverage now of this entire incident, the Korean airline incident, the Soviet shooting down of that airliner. And we have Mark Coogan on the line now. Mark is a reporter who has been in Santa Barbara through the course of the day, the Western Lighthouse, just to find out exactly what is happening and the way they're dealing with the entire incident. Mark?
Well, we have this late-breaking word. Presidential Press Secretary Larry Speaks has just announced now that President Reagan is going back to Washington tomorrow morning.
There's no question that the advent of electronic journalism has answered the what question very often to readers, listeners, and viewers. But has remained largely for newspapers to answer the why question and the how question. It's a frustration we have all the time. We live with it every day. We know radio is going to beat us to what has happened.
Did what I was told. That concept was really nice. I like the cold opening, and I like the flow right into everything, and it's terrific. I think whenever you can do the whole A segment on a story.
Yeah. Well, we certainly covered it from soup to nuts. There's no doubt about that. Let's do follows. What do we want to do? We've got the consulate demonstration tomorrow.
That's right.
I think we have to be careful about the privacy of the North Bay family that had, you know, whose father was on that plane. On the other hand, it's a good, strong local angle. They're going back, what, to Philadelphia, I believe? Yeah. We should probably arrange to get a piece out of there, or go back with them, I don't know. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if Reagan doesn't invite all the families to Washington. By God, that's a wrap. Strike the lights. I'll tell you, that's a day and a half. Yeah, that was a day and a half.